Hi, my name is Sharon, and I'm the Education Director and Team Leader for the Girls Education Challenge, a flagship program for the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. The GEC is a 12-year, £855 million program that consists of 41 projects across 17 countries in Africa and Asia, all of which aim to improve the educational opportunities for the world's most marginalized girls. I will discuss how the GEC is ensuring quality and equitable access to education. But first, I wanted to explain why we have a single focus on girls. At the GEC, we are very aware of the countless number of children who experience significant constraint on their capabilities to learn. These include children with disabilities, children displaced by emergency or conflict, as well as children living in extreme rural or impoverished conditions. And whilst both boys and girls make up these excluded groups, the constraints that are experienced, be it due to extreme poverty, displacement, or disability, are compounded and multiplied when they're experienced by girls. For example, both boys and girls' education will suffer if they are expected to work and bring income to the family, but girls will have the added constraints of extra domestic duties like cooking, collecting water, caring for siblings, vulnerability to sexual violence, menstruation and not having sanitary pads for it, and in some contexts, expectations of early marriage and FGM. And as we all know, these constraints were exacerbated by COVID-19. So these are the reasons why we have a single-minded focus on girls' education. I should be clear that this is not meant to dismiss the significant constraints that boys also face. But as I noted, any constraints experienced by boys, be it due to poverty, conflict, or national school closures or lockdowns, are compounded and multiplied when they're experienced by girls. And this is often due to the unequal gender norms and power dynamics that operate to different degrees in every corner of the globe. With a concerted focus on addressing those multiplied constraints that girls experience, we can then start to have a more equal society with equal opportunities to contribute to it. And this is where the Girls' Education Challenge comes in. At the GEC, we're ensuring quality and equitable access to education for the most marginalized girls through identifying salient barriers that girls face and addressing them accordingly. So these include the barriers that I just mentioned, like extra domestic chores, vulnerability to sexual violence, missing a week of month of school due to menstruation, and the prospect of early marriage, amongst many others. The GEC projects work closely with teachers, parents, and governments to address these multiple and compounded constraints that are found in policies, schools, communities, and indeed in homes. And through this holistic approach, highly marginalized girls are then able to meaningfully participate in formal and non-formal education. They can improve their learning and well-being and quality of life, and eventually progress through education and transition into safe and fairly paid work. Because the GEC is a portfolio of 41 projects, we have a number of initiatives that we are excited about, as they have been particularly effective at addressing constraints and creating enabling environments for girls' learning. So these include innovative approaches to eliminating school-related gender-based violence, developing targeted and effective accelerated learning programs, creating safe spaces through girls' clubs, and delivering social emotional learning and sexual reproductive health education through these clubs. Other important interventions include community-based education, peer mentoring, strategies to reduce early marriage, gender-responsive pedagogy, shifting social norms, supporting severe disability, and working in fragile and conflict-affected states. Now, I'm listing all of these interventions because they actually represent the topics of the GEC Learning Brief series, which is a synthesis of evidence from across our portfolio. Each learning brief focuses on one of the interventions that I've just listed. And these are the interventions that a number of projects have successfully implemented. The learning briefs elaborate on the factors for success and provide recommendations for future design and implementation. Our first two briefs on gender-based violence and girls' clubs are out now, with several more coming at the end of this month. So that said, with regard to the last question, for me, the main barrier to bridging the global education equity gap is the fact that marginalized children are always overlooked, and this is because they are invisible. There are 244 million children out of school, and 53% of which are girls, and they're invisible because they are outside of the education system. They're not in schools, they're hidden by society, and/or they're too hard to reach. For example, An example of this are the Musahar girls, who are from the most politically marginalized, economically exploited, and socially outcast group in Nepal. The GEC Marginalized No More project worked with over 7,000 Musahar girls, the majority of whom were never allowed to enroll into school in the first instance. The project implemented an accelerated learning program to provide foundational literacy and numeracy, as well as peer mentorship to build resilience, language of instruction support as their mother tongue wasn't Nepali, parental and community engagement, and financial support to offset the opportunity cost of girls taking time out of menial labor to attend class. As a result, 3,000 girls entered education for the first time, and their beginner level literacy decreased from 66 to 1% from baseline to endline. Now, this was a success story and one that should not be forgotten amongst the global focus on foundational learning in the early years. I appreciate the focus on strengthening early grade literacy and numeracy, as this provides the necessary foundation for future learning. However, we mustn't overlook the marginalized girls and boys who are not currently in the early grades or in the system at all. Out-of-school youth need functional literacy and numeracy just as much as, if not more than, children starting school. The GEC has worked closely with the most marginalized, and we have a number of cost-effective strategies that can supplement foundational learning approaches to support these overlooked children. And we're working hard with FCDO to ensure that the push for foundational learning is truly inclusive of all. Because it is only until the most marginalized Musahar girl is able to learn to her fullest potential that we have truly bridged the global equity gap in education. Thank you.